Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack the fascinating foundational building blocks of plant life. I mean, think about it. If you pull literally any weed out of the ground, you're going to see a super familiar structure, right? Roots, stems, leaves, maybe some flowers or fruits. But today we're not just pointing at parts. We're really looking at how form perfectly meets function in nature's design. We're going to explore the incredible structural organization of flowering plants. Angiosperms, and see exactly how they're engineered to survive, and really, to thrive. But before we examine the anatomy of a plant, we actually have to start with the brilliant scientist who gave us the framework to understand it all in the first place. I'm talking about Catherine Essau. She was a pioneering woman who completely, and I mean absolutely completely, revitalized the discipline of plant morphology and anatomy worldwide. Through her super meticulous early work, she actually figured out that the curly top virus spreads through a plant via its food-conducting tissue, the phloem. Just incredible stuff. And what's truly inspiring here is that her 1960 book, The Anatomy of Seed Plants, was so phenomenally detailed, so encyclopedic, that it basically became known as the Webster's Dictionary of Plant Biology. When she passed away in 1997, top experts like Peter Raven, the director of anatomy and morphology at the Missouri Botanical Garden, marveled at her lifelong mastery. He pointed out that she absolutely dominated the field, literally even at the age of 99. Her journey is just wild to think about. From studying agriculture in Europe to coming over and getting her doctorate in the US in 1931, she was constantly pushing the boundaries of botanical science. When she published Plant Anatomy in 1954, it was a huge deal, because it took a really dynamic developmental approach to how plants are built. By 1957, she became only the sixth woman ever elected to the National Academy of Sciences. And get this, she was awarded the National Medal of Science by President George Bush in 1989. Her whole legacy, it's a massive testament to the sheer power of just paying really close attention. All right, let's look at the game plan for our structural tour today. We'll be covering pioneering plant anatomy, the root system, the stem system, leaves and venation, leaf arrangements, and we'll wrap up with floral formations. Section 1. Pioneering Plant Anatomy. We're going to start our journey by looking at how early naturalists actually came up with standard technical terms to categorize the immense external diversity of higher plants. And that brings us to morphology. So what is it? It's basically the study of gross structural features. Now, initially, this was really just about describing what the naked eye or maybe a simple magnifying lens could see. But that description was absolutely vital. The big takeaway here is that learning these structures isn't just about memorizing some dusty technical terms. This really detailed cataloging actually became the bedrock that helped later scientists figure out complex questions in physiology and evolution. It tells us how a plant physically solves big survival challenges, like anchoring itself, finding food, and reproducing in its specific home. Section 2. The root system. So moving underground, we hit the true foundation of our botanical building, the root system, which develops right from the germinating seed. Now, nature actually uses two vastly different evolutionary strategies down here for absorption and anchorage. In dicots, like mustard, the plant drives a main pillar, the primary root, deep down into the soil. We call that a taproot system. If you've ever tried to pull a dandelion out of your yard and had it stubbornly snap back at you, well, you know exactly how strong a taproot can be. On the flip side, in monocots, like wheat, that primary root doesn't stick around long. Instead, the plant spreads this wide, shallow, fibrous mat of roots that all just pop out right from the base of the stem. Oh, and nature actually has a third trick up its sleeve, too: adventitious roots. You'll see these in grasses, monsteras, or giant banyan trees, where the roots sprout from entirely different, unexpected parts of the plant. Looking at this, you can visually see that primary root just descending powerfully straight down. And from that main axis, you've got lateral roots branching out in different orders. We call those secondary and tertiary roots. Together, they form this incredibly solid anchor in the earth. But hey, anchorage is only half the job, right? They're also down there working incredibly hard to absorb water and minerals, store up reserve food, and even synthesize plant growth regulators. It's honestly fascinating to see exactly how a root manages to grow. If we travel upwards from the very tip, we can see how each highly specialized microscopic zone takes its turn driving growth. First, the tip is protected by this tiny thimble-like structure called the root cap, kind of like a hard hat, as it forces its way through coarse dirt. Just a few millimeters above that is the meristematic region. This is where tiny cells with dense protoplasm are just dividing like crazy. Next up is the region of elongation, where those cells rapidly stretch out to push the root deeper. And finally, we hit the region of maturation, where the outer cells differentiate and grow these super delicate, thread-like root hairs. Those are the plant's primary tools for actually pulling water and minerals out of the soil. Section 3. The stem system. Breaking through the surface, our architectural tour heads up the main support column, which develops from the plumule of the embryo. Now, you might be wondering, how do we scientifically distinguish a stem from a root? Well, it's pretty simple. The stem is explicitly defined by this alternating pattern of nodes and internodes. Nodes are the exact spots where leaves pop out, and internodes, that's just the empty space between them. The stem also grows buds, which can be terminal, right at the very tip, or axillary, tucked along the sides. Think of the stem as basically the plant's plumbing system and scaffolding all rolled into one. It's usually green when it's young and turns woody later on, but man, it performs a massive logistical role. It conducts water and minerals straight up from the roots and then transports photosynthesates, the food made by the leaves, back downward. But it's super adaptable too. Some stems completely modify themselves to store food, offer protection, or even aid in vegetative propagation so the plant can spread and clone itself. A real multitasker. Section 4. Leaves and venation. So let's talk about the primary solar panels of our structure, the leaves. They originate from shoot apical meristems and grow in an upward acropetal order. Let's look at their internal plumbing, which we call venation. The flat green part of the leaf is the lamina, and it's absolutely packed with veins that give it rigidity and act as tiny transport highways. Dicots usually use this net-like reticulate venation. You can see that on the left, where veinlets form a really complex branching network off a main midrib. But monocots, over on the right, they use parallel venation, where the veins just stream in these neat, uniform parallel lines all the way across. And nature brilliantly customizes these solar panels depending on the environment. When a leaf blade is just one solid piece, we call it a simple leaf. But if the edge of the leaf is incised all the way deep to the midrib, breaking it up into lots of little leaflets, it becomes a compound leaf. And these come in two major architectural styles. On the left is the pinnately compound leaf, like on a neem plant, where all the leaflets line up along a single central axis, the rachis. On the right is the pommadely compound leaf, like the silk cotton plant. Here, the leaflets all radiate outward from one single point at the tip of the stem. Honestly, it looks exactly like the fingers spreading out from the palm of your hand. Section 5. Leaf arrangements. So we've got our solar panels, but how does the plant actually position them on the stem to make sure they aren't just shading each other out? That specific engineering challenge brings us to phyllotaxy. Plants basically use three main layouts to distribute their leaves and maximize light. First, there's the alternate pattern, seen in mustard and sunflowers, where a single leaf pops out at each node, staggering left, right up the stem. Then there's the opposite pattern, used by guava trees, where a pair of leaves arise at the exact same node and face directly away from each other. And finally, if more than two leaves pop out of a single node, it creates a whorled pattern, kind of like a little umbrella, which you'll see in the Alstonia plant. It's just structural geometry at its absolute finest. Section 6. Floral formations. We have finally reached the absolute apex of our plant structure. This is where the shoot tip condenses and transforms to produce the crown jewels, the flowers. Now, when a single shoot tip turns into a flower, it's solitary. But usually, flowers are clustered together on a floral axis, and we call that whole arrangement an inflorescence. There's a fascinating duality in how these are built. In a ramosose inflorescence, the central stem just keeps on growing upward, continuously sprouting new flowers out of its sides. But in a cymose inflorescence, the main stem actually terminates. It caps itself off with a flower, which stops its upward growth entirely, and all the new flowers have to bloom below it. So we've seen the roots anchor, the stems climb and conduct, the leaves capture the sun, and the shoots transform into reproductive blooms, which really leaves you wondering, armed with this foundational structural knowledge, the very same tools Catherine Esau championed, just how infinite is the diversity of angiosperms out there? The basic building blocks are the exact same, but as these plants adapt to store water in deserts, climb over rainforest canopies, or protect themselves in every conceivable habitat, the structural possibilities are literally limitless. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep observing and keep learning.